If you feel like you really struggle with relationships and you find that you're often just met with a lot of hurt and frustration and that you just keep getting triggered, I have a very important message for you that I have a strong feeling you need to hear. You are not defective and you are capable of having healthy, successful relationships. This is our third and final video in our series on attachment styles, and we are going to be going over 5 ways to heal your attachment style and build a more secure attachment so that you can find the happy, fulfilling relationship that you're looking for and that you deserve. These are all strategies that I've learned in my trainings as a therapist, that I apply with the people that I work with, and that I've used myself to shift to a more secure attachment style. So I can say from extensive experience that this stuff works. If you missed parts 1 and 2 of this series, I would really recommend checking those out first so that you can get the most out of this video. So I will leave them linked in the description for you to check out. But if you've been following along in this series, it should be clear that our attachment style can change no matter our childhood experiences, no matter what attachment style we might be starting out with. One of my favorite terms in the therapy world is earned security. Earned security is when we've had difficult experiences in our childhood that would make it likely that we would have an insecure attachment. And then later in life, we become securely attached through positive relationship experiences and doing some deep work on ourselves. And that is why it's called earned security, because we do have to earn it. It requires time and energy and effort, and it's a whole journey, but it is one of the most worthwhile, important, life-changing journeys we can go on. You notice that a lot of these steps will apply no matter your attachment style, whether you're predominantly anxious or avoidant or disorganized. And the reason for this is that at the root of each of these insecure attachment styles is the same fear, a fear of abandonment. The only difference is how each of these attachment styles cope with this fear differently. So if we're anxiously attached, we might cope with that fear by clinging on to that person even harder to try to make sure they don't leave us. And if we're predominantly avoidantly attached, we might cope with that fear by keeping that person at an arm's distance so that they can't even get close enough to hurt us in the first place. All of these steps are meant to address that same root fear of abandonment. So regardless of what attachment style you're starting out with, I think you will get something out of this video. So let's go into step number 1. Find a partner who has a secure attachment style. In the self-help world, there's this very common message that
you need to be fully healed on your own first before you enter a relationship with someone.
this could not be farther from the truth. A large chunk of the healing work can only be done in a relationship. We don't heal in isolation. We need those experiences that we can only get by being in a relationship to show us what our relationship triggers are so that we can then work on them. Which is why being with a partner who is securely attached is a requirement to becoming securely attached ourselves. If our early involvements have been problematic, then subsequent relationships can offer second chances, perhaps affording us the potential to love, feel, and reflect with the freedom that flows from secure attachment. This is one of my favorite quotes from John Bowlby himself, the father of attachment theory. People with a secure attachment are generally reliable and trustworthy, and that's going to provide that safety and stability that we all need to feel secure in our relationships. They're also excellent communicators of their needs, boundaries, and concerns, and so they're going to act as really great role models for us for what healthy communication looks like, and we can kind of learn from them and adopt their communication for our own. They're also just generally very loving, caring, compassionate, supportive people, and that's going to make them very good at calming down those fears and relationship anxieties we might have. So they're probably not going to be as off-put by an anxiously attached person's need for closeness because they're likely going to be more comfortable with that level of closeness themselves, and they're going to be able to provide their anxiously attached partner with the reassurance that they need whenever they start feeling anxious about the relationship potentially ending. And over time, as the anxiously attached partner has more of these reassuring experiences with their secure partner, that is going to correct their belief that all partners don't want to be as close as they do, and all partners are eventually going to leave. Secure partners are also not going to feel threatened by an avoidantly attached person's need for independence because they probably also value their independence themselves. And over time, as the avoidantly attached partner has more of these experiences with their secure partner where they respect their need for independence, that is going to over time correct their belief that all relationships are suffocating. In the therapy world, we call these types of positive relationship experiences corrective experiences. If you are not used to having these types of corrective experiences and you're not used to receiving this love and care and respect in your relationships, it is going to feel a bit sus at first. It is going to be uncomfortable. And the reason it's uncomfortable is because it's unfamiliar. However, just because something is uncomfortable and unfamiliar doesn't mean it's not also good and healthy. Now, with all this being said, being with a secure partner is a requirement, but it is not a cure-all. We still got work to do, so let's move on to step 2. Understand your attachment style. By this point in the series, we've gotten a good understanding of our own attachment style. We've done the attachment styles quiz, and now in this final video, we're gonna do some more digging. Knowledge really is power here. The more familiar we become with our own attachment style, the more information we have to help us become more secure in our relationships. So I've gathered a few questions for us that I really invite you to ask yourself. These are all great as journaling prompts to reflect on ourselves and our past relationships and how our attachment style might have played out in them. What beliefs do I hold about relationships? What makes me feel unsafe in relationships? What experiences from my childhood have contributed to the formation of my blank attachment style? What actions from my partner trigger my blank attachment tendencies? What thoughts and feelings do I experience when this happens? So if we're anxiously attached, we might start to feel anxious and insecure in the relationship when we haven't heard from our partner for a while, and we might start to think things like, they don't care about me anymore, they're definitely gonna leave soon. If we're avoidantly attached, we might feel irritated when our partner tries to get closer to us, and we might have thoughts like, oh my god, they're so needy, I feel like I'm being smothered. What do I do when I'm triggered? Do I repeatedly call and text them, or maybe do I give them the silent treatment thinking that that will give them the message? Or do I shut down, or do I run away from the situation, or maybe do I just end the relationship? How has my blank attachment style impacted my relationships? For those of us with a predominantly avoidant attachment style, I'd also invite you to ask yourself, where does this belief that dependency is a bad thing come from? And for those of us with a predominantly anxious attachment style, I'd also invite you to ask yourself, what makes me think that I need to be in a relationship to feel good about myself? What do I fear will happen if I'm alone? As we're answering these questions, let's all be as non-judgy and as compassionate to ourselves as we can. Whatever our answers are to these questions doesn't make us an unhealthy person, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with us. It simply means that this is where we're at right now, and now that we know this about ourselves and we know what our areas of improvement are, we are going to work on them. Speaking of working on our areas of improvement, let's move on to step 3, and that is to build distress tolerance. We all have our knee-jerk reactions to overwhelming emotions, whether that's to have an outburst or to just shut down. None of these reactions are conducive to having a healthy relationship. We are going to need to learn how to self-soothe if we want to have better relationships. So if we're anxiously attached, we're going to need to learn how to regulate our anxiety on our own without someone else. And if we're avoidantly attached, we're going to need to learn how to sit with our emotions instead of just immediately squashing them down. And this is where distress tolerance comes in. Distress tolerance is basically just a fancy therapy term to mean sitting with uncomfortable emotions rather than immediately reacting to them, and instead responding to them in a healthy, balanced way. Basically, it's managing our emotions instead of allowing our emotions to manage us. And I think we could all do with a bit more of that in our lives. The good news is we've already done the first step to distress tolerance in step 2, when we built self-awareness around what our triggers are, how we feel when we're triggered, and how we respond when we're triggered. This self-awareness is going to make it so much easier for us to notice when we're getting overwhelmed in the first place and then to respond in a healthy way. I see healthy responses to emotions as having two parts. The first part is the part you can see, and that is to do some sort of soothing activity to ground us and calm our nervous system. The two most effective things we can do here are, number one, to move our body and do something with this anxious or angry energy and just get it out of our system. Whether that's through doing some yoga or going for a walk or a run, lifting some weights. And number two, to do some diaphragmatic breathing. If we're feeling really overwhelmed, we're probably breathing really shallow, and that's definitely not helping. It is really incredible how doing just 3 slow, deep breaths down to our diaphragm can completely shift our state in just less than a minute. The second part to healthy responses to emotions is the part you can't see, because this part all happens in our mind, and that is to challenge your insecure attachment voice. We all, to an extent, have a fearful inner voice that's trying to guide us away from danger and towards safety. And if we've had past painful experiences and we have an insecure attachment style, this voice is going to have a tendency to overcompensate and try to convince us that we're in danger when we're actually not and everything's actually just fine. And we're going to need to get really good at identifying when this voice is overcompensating and then choosing not to listen to it. So whenever we start to notice this voice telling us things like, oh, they're pulling away, they're definitely going to leave you soon, or they're getting too close, don't let them get too close, distance. We're going to need to get into the habit of asking ourselves in these moments, do these thoughts have any grounding in my current reality? Or is it more of a reflection of past hurtful experiences? And if it's the latter, that's when we tell that voice, thank you, anxious attachment voice, or thank you, avoidant attachment voice, for trying to protect me. I know that's all you're trying to do because we've been hurt in the past. And in this current phase of my life, I need to learn how to be more secure in my relationships, so I'm choosing not to listen to you right now. When we can compassionately challenge that insecure attachment voice like this, we don't let it take over and dictate our behavior. And we prevent ourselves from using past experiences to assess our present moment. And instead, we can just assess the present moment as it is and choose to respond to it in a healthy way. Trust me, we are going to want to do some distress tolerance before moving on to this next step, because it can be nerve-wracking, and that is to practice open communication. You are allowed to feel anxious that your partner doesn't care about you anymore, and you're allowed to feel uncomfortable when things start to get too close. We just need to make sure that whenever we're feeling like this, that instead of defaulting to our usual reaction, instead we communicate to our partner how we're feeling and what we need from them to help us with these feelings. We're also going to need to make sure that we are communicating these feelings, needs, and concerns in a calm, clear, and non-attacky way, and in a way that feels like you guys are collaborating. So, what on earth does this communication look like? Our go-to here is going to be I statements. We love our I statements. Things like I feel, I need, I would love it if. When we frame our feelings and needs with I statements, it doesn't come off like we're blaming or attacking the other person, because we're just talking about ourselves and our own experience, and this is going to be much more likely to land better with the other person. So let's see what this open communication would look like in practice. So let's say we have an anxious attachment style and we're starting to get anxious because the person we're dating hasn't texted us back in a few hours, and we're starting to worry that they're losing interest in us. Instead of calling or texting them a bunch of times, or ignoring them on purpose, or trying to read their mind, or maybe just not saying anything ever, instead, maybe next time we see them, we might choose to ask for clarification and say something like, hey, when I don't hear from you for that long, I start to get anxious and I start to worry that you're losing interest in me. Is that true? Are my thoughts accurate? And if they're secure and everything's going well, they're probably going to be like, what? Oh my God, no, of course I'm still interested in you. Nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. We would also take this moment to ask for what we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. So we might say something like, I would like for us to stay in more frequent contact, or hey, next time you know you're going to be away from your phone for that long, would you mind just letting me know in advance so that I'm not wondering what's going on? Now, if we have an avoidant attachment style, our tendency is probably to under communicate and withdraw and maybe even end things with the person. We don't have to end things with someone whenever we start to feel suffocated. Instead, we can communicate a boundary with them. So we can say something like, hey, I do need to focus during the day, so I won't be able to be as responsive to text during the day, but I still want to talk to you every day, so could we do an evening phone call instead? And if the person is secure and everything is going well, they're going to be like, yeah, that totally makes sense, and I'll look forward to our evening phone calls. If we are not used to communicating like this, it is going to feel risky as at first. And that is because typically people with an insecure attachment style fear that if they do communicate their needs and feelings with their partner, that they're gonna get upset at them, or they're gonna reject their need, or maybe they're just gonna abandon them. We need to push through this fear and speak up anyways. And the way we're gonna do that is by reminding ourselves that no matter how the other person responds, it's still going to be a win for us. Because either a partner responds positively and they understand the importance of what we're saying and they make an effort to meet our need, and then we end up feeling more connected to them and more secure in the relationship than before this issue came up. Corrective experience, win. Or they do not respond well and they argue back and they deny our experience and maybe they actually do leave. If so, great, this is a win as well, because this reaction of theirs confirms to us that they are not a suitable partner for us. They don't have a capacity for perspective taking. They are not capable of meeting our needs and making us feel secure. And now we're free to go off and find someone who does. I promise that practicing open communication does get easier with each time you do it. And you, first of all, experience how empowering it is to state your needs and boundaries. And also you see for yourself that really you can only benefit from it in the end. I couldn't make this video without mentioning therapy as one of the steps. Attachment-based therapy is a form of therapy that guides people towards becoming more securely attached. And in this form of therapy, we do dig into our childhood and our relationship with our caregivers when we were very young, and we try to make links between these early experiences and our current relationships. And the hope is that through making sense of these early experiences and understanding how they have distorted our beliefs about our current relationships, that we can then resolve these early experiences and start to form healthier beliefs. The other goal for attachment-based therapy is that the therapist acts as that safe and secure base that we need to feel safe to express our true selves and start to form a more positive view of ourselves. And that the experience of just receiving care and comfort and empathy and acceptance from the therapist and feeling what it's like to feel seen and heard and understood, that in itself is healing. Now, to make this video as complete as possible, I did want to include some steps specific to both the anxious and the avoidant attachment style. And for those of us who have a predominantly disorganized attachment style, you will benefit from steps from both. For those of us who are anxiously attached, we're used to spending more time focusing on others and putting others' needs before our own, and to the point where we might not even know what our needs are, and we might have lost our sense of self in the process. It is now time to shift our focus back to ourselves and get to know ourselves better and build up our sense of self so that we can feel secure on our own. We're gonna spend time by ourselves doing our own thing. So we're gonna start a new hobby or take a class in something that interests us or start a new workout routine. We are just going to do activities that fulfill us and make us feel good about ourselves. We're gonna go on solo dates and not scroll on our phone or text or call anyone else. we are just going to really spend time with ourselves and enjoy our own company and nurture our relationship with ourselves. We're going to start meeting our own emotional needs. Our partner shouldn't be our only source for getting our emotional needs met. We should be able to meet enough of those needs on our own. So we are going to start reassuring ourselves daily that we love who we are smart, fun, beautiful, and we are whole and worthy on our own. And even if that person can't be there for us, we will be here for us, always. For those of us with an avoidant attachment style, I've got 2 steps for us. Number 1, we need to work on our emotional awareness. We tend to be pretty out of touch with our emotions, and we might even see them as this nuisance and this problem that we need to get rid of. If we ignore our emotions, we miss out big time because our emotions hold really important messages about what's right and what's wrong for us. And so we're gonna need them if we wanna live our best life. A really great tool for getting more familiar with our emotions is the feelings wheel. Therapists love this freaking feelings wheel, which groups all these different emotions together, and we can use it to really pinpoint exactly how we're feeling in any given moment. So a great place to start would be to every day, 3 times a day, once when we wake up in the morning, once in the afternoon, and once in the evening before we go to bed, we check in with ourselves and use the feelings wheel to identify how we're feeling in that moment. The second step is realizing that there are serious costs to pushing away relationships. First of all, life is a lot harder on your own, and also you might just end up as a bitter, lonely old person who dies alone. The famous 85-year-long Harvard study on happiness shows that the number 1 thing that determines our happiness in life is relationships. So how sad would it be to never experience that highest form of happiness that we can only get by having a deep connection with someone? I know it feels risky to open ourselves up to someone. However, the risks of never opening ourselves up to someone are greater. We can really only get so far in life with just work and our hobbies. We also need to honor our needs for love and connection and recognize that we are worthy and deserving of loving relationships. Right, Finn? But you don't have any difficulties feeling deserving of love. And you have no issues stating your needs. This guy is the most securely attached person I know. We should all aim to be more like him. Yeah, I just called him a person, but that's fine. And that brings us to the end of our series on attachment styles. I loved making this series for you, and I really hope that you found it helpful and that you learned something about yourself that's going to benefit your relationships. If you missed videos 1 and 2, I will leave them linked on the screen here. But in any case, as always, I hope you are doing well, and I will see you next time. Bye.